I'm the man who has the ball. I'm the man who can throw it faster than... So that is why I am better than everyone in the world.
You've reached the end of set number 3.
And he hit him.
Oh, and that hit him right on the elbow. That one got him. Been hit 21 times this year. And you would think the overwhelming majority of the times he was hit was right on that forearm and lead elbow.
Somebody just got thrown out. That was not intentional.
Yeah. Looks like Miguel Cairo.
Grandal takes a ball in the dirt, and Jose peels away. Throw down to second, meets him there, and he is out.
Well, he went in real hard to Goodrum.
And Goodrum is jawing at him, and Jose's going right back at him. Jose is really not happy with being hit by that pitch. And now the benches are going to clear at Comerica Park.
Howdy.
Garrett Crochet is right in the middle of that thing. The Sox and Tigers in their final game of the season in the 9th inning. Everyone spilling out of the bullpen and meeting at second base.
I'm not sure why Lang was in the middle of that, but Jose is justifiably unhappy. That's the most unhappy I've seen. Chicago sucks! Lang decided to get in the middle of it.
A lot to talk about there.
Oh, yeah.
Gavin Sheets goes in to pull out.
All right. So I was just playing a little bit of the audio before we started tonight as was waiting. I don't know what's going on their Slack channel lately, but we've been having problems with it, having you, Uper. Yeah, I was so sick because I got all my show prep done way ahead of time, got everything ready to go for this evening, and yeah, that's what I figured would happen. So I was like, usually you're pretty early. So welcome to Tigers Radio here at the MotorCityBengals.com. I'm Rogelio Garcia. Is Uper, and Chris should be joining us here shortly. And we are proud to be part of the Fansided network. And speaking of that, this evening, Gabrielle Starr, who's the editor at This Ball Is Out of Here, which is a Phillies site, and the Bo Sox Injection site, will be joining us at 9 o'clock. She's also the host of the Locked On Red Sox podcast as the wild card races are coming to an end here shortly, as Boston, New York, Toronto, and Seattle rather, are fighting for the last 2 spots in the wild card. The NL is pretty much decided. We'll get to that a little later, but yeah, we have to discuss this whole situation that happened the other day where Tony La Russa basically pulled a Michael Jordan, and I wrote an article about that because I thought that if you have seen The Last Dance, it reminded me of Michael Jordan kind of making up something to motivate himself, and I think that's exactly what Tony La Russa did there, Uper.
Oh, there's no question. They are looking to foment an us against the world kind of attitude in that clubhouse. And I think it all goes back to a natural thing. They've been so far ahead in the division. I think some kind of natural complacency has probably come into play, over the summer. So they've been kind of playing half-assed mediocre baseball for a good chunk of summer. And now they're looking to kick it into gear, and they needed something. And this is what they latched onto.
And, Chris, I was just discussing how Tony La Russa kind of pulled a Michael Jordan and made up some motivation to kind of get the troops going. And so I don't know what you thought about that, but when he was talking about, well, Detroit's been, I'm not paraphrasing what he said, but basically that Detroit was playing way aggressive and they haven't hit Abreu in 2 years. And I understand Abreu being frustrated. I mean, it's the 22nd time he got hit. He's getting sick of it. He doesn't wear any padding, so it doesn't feel like he needs to. But that whole thing, you can even tell by AJ's comments, like, what just happened? If you're speaking, I can't hear you. Well, he works.
Well, I think to me, what it comes down to is it had a pro wrestling vibe to it.
Yes,
all we needed was Mean Gene Okerlund out there asking questions of these guys about how supposedly angry they were about this. And to me, it's a complete farce.
Yeah, it's okay. What is going on? I can't hear you at all, man. I wish I could. Trust me. Because my mic level is there. Okay. So hopefully it's working there. I see he's working that out. But no, the other thing I took away from this, Uper, it reminded me of, you're right, a good WWF old school reference to that. The other thing I didn't understand was why Tim Anderson was suspended. Did I miss something? Was there some secret angle that I missed about Tim Anderson getting in trouble?
It was right in the middle of the scrum. You can see if they a couple of videos they had it highlighted. He bumped the umpire backwards. It almost looked like a chest bump. I'm not 100% sure of that, but he definitely moved Tim Timmons backwards a couple of feet with some kind of movement he made, and you could see Timmons give him the heave. So
okay, was it by design or accident? Because I saw somebody posted on Twitter, and it looked like he just ran in the middle and nothing. So I wasn't. The angle. Maybe there's more video of it that I haven't seen.
Yeah, it's it looked to me like they were face to face. I mean, but obviously with 30 guys moving, not necessarily as one, things can happen. I would like to think he didn't go after the umpire for any particular reason, but definitely he moved him back a couple of feet, and Timmons took exception to it.
You know what's interesting too is that Glass Half Fulmer posted this on Twitter, the fight that happened in 2000, and I totally and utterly forgot about that. But I forgot how ugly that one was, and that was in the last days of Phil Gardner before he was fired from being the Tigers manager. And of course, Jeff Weaver was in the middle of it, which to me is no shock, no surprise, because anybody that remembers those 2000 late 90s, 2000 Tiger teams, Jeff Weaver had quite a bit of a temper on him, and a fight broke out 3 different times. And I forgot about Jim Parquet. That guy, I was like, that guy is a name I haven't heard in a long time. You think about it's like those early 2000 White Sox teams. It was like a staple on them too. Anyway, that whole incident just got out of hand so quickly, and 3 separate fights broke out of it. And those were the Tiger teams that just did not care. It was an ugly time. Chris, are you still having mic problems? Yeah.
Does Chris know sign language?
I'm wondering if it's just his, is it the cord or is it power? Everything seems like it's on, right? We're having a show meeting right now, apparently.
Can you hear me through the laptop now?
Yes.
But I think it's through the laptop again. Sorry, I was trying to use the headset. I hear you guys through the headset.
That's
no, it was weird. I was both muted and on the wrong microphone, or it was on a thing that I'm not using before, but whatever. Yeah, so you covered it, but it was utter nonsense. Tony La Russa's comment that, like, hey, if you can't pitch with command inside, then don't do it. Like, come on. Yeah. There's a reason Abreu has been hit 20 plus times this year. He's not, super far off the plate. And yeah, it's a weird old school thing about Tony La Russa. Like, we joked around, like, odd that an old drunk would take offense to something that wasn't. I mean, if you've ever met an old drunk at a bar, then they take offense to everything. So, it was silly, but yeah, it should make for an interesting weekend.
Yeah, for sure. And right now the Tigers are kind of struggling against Minnesota, but again, I'm not really mad about the Tigers right now in terms of what they're playing, because this is the end of the year. They have exceeded my expectations, A, and B, more importantly, they've played above their heads with all the injuries that they've dealt with, and they have been able to be watchable and stay in games and be competitive. We've talked about that numerous times in the last few weeks. So I'm not really bummed out right now that they're losing to the Twins, because and I hate to say this, but I kind of expected it, because they've given it like Scotty, like giving it all the goat. It's honestly, like they've done a really good job, and right now it's just we're interested in what's going on in Toledo right now. Is there's a pitcher's duel, which I didn't think that would happen between St. Paul and Toledo. But nevertheless, it was funny. Lynn Henning, by the way, tweeted this was the last game of the year for Toledo earlier. And I was like, what? Come on, they play this Sunday. Yeah. Was
there an outbreak in the clubhouse that we don't know about?
Apparently, I don't know. But when he tweeted that earlier, I'm like, oh, come on, man.
They're still scoreless. Riley Green's got 3 hits, but they are scoreless.
Did you see that video of Torkelson getting drilled last night?
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. Chris.
That was high. That was not good.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I know it's the minor leagues, but that was the sort of pitch. Like if that's where Abreu had been hit with a fastball up and in, like on his near his neck,
above the numbers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily be as dumbfounded by the response. So I thought there might be something more to it this year, but who knows? I mean, maybe that guy is just famous for completely losing his fastball. But like most pitchers at the AAA level don't lose a fastball like that. So I don't know what the deal was there.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what happened there either. But the one thing that take away from the minor league like now is Torkelson is they are Torkelson's reaching towards 30 home runs for the year, which would be the second person in the system, Josh Luster being the first. So again, the fact that the system has grown with the guys like Bo Brisky, Brandon White, and I talked about this in the article, they're getting solid and Christopher, who and he's come here. You know what, Christopher? I think you're right about that. I think they will come down to earth a little bit next year based off the expectations. I think if the expectations are, to me right now, just get to 500 and be competitive next year. I mean, it depends on what happens with the free agency. And by the way, if you want to check out a free agency piece, speaking of which, go to MotorCityBengals.com and check out the piece that Chris did. And there's a graphic on Twitter and on our Facebook page at Motor City Bengals where so you can have the tier 1, tier through tier 5 tiers, right? 5 tiers?
Yeah.
5 tiers.
End up doing 30 players of free agents just to, you've seen things like that float around the internet for a while now. It's usually like, hey, you have $25 or $15 to spend. I wanted to make it a little bit more realistic.
That was genius. It was absolutely
the Tigers. Well, hopefully, people enjoyed it. But I actually have, not to foreshadow too much, but my Inside the Numbers deals with that might suggest the Tigers come back next year. So just stick around for that, Christopher.
Yeah, if you're watching us on YouTube, by the way, thank you for watching, by the way. And I'm going to post that image right now, so people who are watching it on YouTube. By the way, there's a certain account. I'm not going to say what account it is, but I feel like they say the same thing that other people say, and then just reword it and make it sound like they sound like more intelligent. And it just drives me nuts. I just saw a tweet from this account now, and I'm just people have been saying
that is later.
Yeah, I'll tell you who that is later because
wow, the Tigers are up. Tigers are up 5-4 now.
What just happened?
Another home run for Goodrum.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah, there we go.
The man wants a job next year.
Yeah, he does want a job next year, eh? Wow. Sorry, I've been watching. So, by the way, if I say quite a bit, I've been watching this show called Stand Still. It's a Scottish BBC show. Have you ever heard of this show?
No.
It is one of the funny. I've been having trouble sleeping at night, so admittedly, I just watch whatever. And Netflix recommended you'll like the show. It's like, okay. And it's about two old Scottish gentlemen living in a small city in Scotland, and it's just their hijinks. And so it's like Golden Girls meets Scotland. I don't know what else to describe it, but it's pretty cool.
It sounds great. It sounds just like the stuff I like. What's the name of it? Stand
Still or Still Standing or something like that. I'll give you the name afterwards.
Awesome.
You definitely would like it, you. I think you would. So here's the image, by the way. If you're watching us on YouTube, here is the image, and we're gonna actually put that. I think I'm actually gonna make that our default image for the podcast. So everybody can participate.
It's so damn busy though. But
no, it's not. Chris, thank you for being a YouTube subscriber. Really appreciate that, by the way.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I will say this: the image of Comerica in the background, I took that. And the game you took me to, Raj.
Nice.
Cabrera was chasing his 500th home run.
Oh, nice.
That's from your seats.
Oh, that's right. Sweet. I was wondering, wow, that looks familiar. And yeah, so yeah, go to MotorCityBengals.com. Check out the article. It's doing very well. And go to our Facebook page, like our Facebook page. And if you haven't followed us on Twitter, Tigers Radio Pod. And you can find our individual stuff from there. So the Tigers, Nicholas Goodrum just apparently hit a second home run tonight, third multi-hit home run game. His last one being the first time since May 31st, 2019. It's the Tigers PR department doing that. Wow. Goodrum is on a tear.
It does feel like he does this against the Twins. I feel like he's done a lot of damage against the Twins in his career, but which of course is a former organization. Yeah. So.
Yeah, for sure. So, but yeah, we're gonna try to go through our segments here pretty quickly because we have Gabrielle coming up at 9:00 this evening. So it's one of those things where the other thing about the series coming up with Chicago too is what are the Tigers playing for? Draft position. Chris, I think you mentioned this before. Where are the Tigers draft anywhere from 11th to 13th right now?
Let's see. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You got it, Uper?
I was looking at it last night. I tweeted a little bit about it. Right now, they're at they have a 475 winning percentage. This was actually my inside the number, by the way. Good.
Oh, okay.
save.
Whoa. Wait a minute. We're gonna do some show production.
Boom.
Right.
Boom. Boom. Boom.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Where is it? There we go.
It's time for Rogelio and Chris to go inside the numbers.
All right, Uper, go ahead. What is it? What is your inside the number?
475 is the Tigers' winning percentage. They go into today in a dead heat with the Angels and Mets. They would hold the tiebreaker should they finish tied over those two teams. So they have the 11th pick right now. The Royals and the Rockies both have a 462 winning percentage. So they're very close. So the Tigers could conceivably, if they have a bad weekend, get the 9th pick. That's about the best they can do. The worst they could do is probably fall back to 13. So anywhere from 9 to 13, they hold all tiebreakers for the better pick over all 4 of those teams. So we'll just have to see.
All right.
But a top 10 pick would be pretty good adding into the system.
Yeah, I trust this administration a little bit more, so I can see that. Chris, what is your inside the number?
Yeah, just to repeat, from the looks of it, it looks like a pretty solid draft next year too. So, this is going to Christopher's point earlier. My inside the number is 7.66. Last week I talked about how the Tigers have outperformed their WAR, and I tried to turn that into an article, and it just got away from me. I might still do it, but and I was looking for reasons why that might be, and there was one number that stood out, and that 7.66 is Detroit's clutch rating as a pitching staff, which is the highest in all of baseball.
Wow.
The Mariners at 7.40 are the only other team above 5.
Wow.
So what exactly is clutch? It's a win probability stat that measures how much better you perform in high leverage situations than you do in context neutral situations. So basically, late in games with men on base, Tigers have been the best team in baseball, or at least in terms of overperforming in the biggest moments this year. And if you sort by the pitchers, sorted by at least 80 innings, Willie Peralta ranks 4th this year in clutch rating. Casey Mize ranks 10th. He actually was top 5 until last night. He gave a 3-run homer, which is interesting. But the problem with clutch as a stat is that, generally speaking, it is not repeatable. It is just something that is considered kind of luck. There are some pitchers who, over the course of their career, kind of develop an ability to seemingly step up in the biggest situations, and others who kind of melt down. But for the most part, it's just it evens out over the course of their career. So, like Zach Greinke has a career clutch score of 6.25, which is one of the best, in the last 20 years. Justin Verlander is at 0.50, basically nothing, and Rick Porcello is at negative 5.45. So it goes up and down. So all of that is to say that, the Tigers probably got pretty lucky this year in situations. And we'll just, we shouldn't necessarily expect that level of clutch performance again next year, particularly from Peralta and Mize, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
All right. That's a good one. And mine is 36%. And that is the strikeout, the whiff rate of Max Scherzer as a Dodger. Which is 2% higher than he normally is, which is 34%. And there was an article that was posted today by Mike Pratello of MLB.com. This was a couple days ago, actually, rather. And what blew my mind is how much he is. I mean, he's only allowed 5. I think it's under 6 runs in his starts. It's unreal. The man has been, you look maybe whatever the pennant race. Also, the other number part of this too is his ERA is 0.78 and his FIP is 1.35. Still pretty damn good. So Max Scherzer coming through in the clutch. And again, this is where the Padres, we talked about this last week, where the Padres fired their pitching coach, which, by the way, there's going to be an ironic twist because his pitching coach is on my wall now. Larry Rothschild, when he was with the 1981 Evansville Triplets, the Tigers AAA affiliate. And it's one of the last pictures of Jim Leland in a minor league uniform. But either way, regardless, there's a guy the Padres could have had at the trade deadline, and they want to pull the trigger. So he's coming up clutch for the Dodgers. But what are you going to, it's one of those things where Padre fans are going to have the big what if, but again, you can't play that game, and you got to be aggressive. Like you said, Chris, prospects are currency.
The good.
Oh, that's good.
The bad.
Oh, that's bad.
And the ugly.
I want to say hello to our friend Word Vango, who's been checking it back and forth between us and the Tigers game. So appreciate that, Word. All right, Chris.
A lot of bombs.
Yeah, Good Room just carrying the team today. All right, Chris, what is your good and bad?
Rooker just tied it up.
Of course he did.
So my good is Jose Altuve. So Altuve and the rest of the Astros, including AJ Hinch, got a lot of justified criticism after cheating, and it gave a lot of people, I think, a great deal of pleasure last year when Altuve went out there and basically soiled himself. He hit 219 with 5 home runs last year. And before that, he looked like a potential Hall of Famer. So it was like, wow, has he really just been cheating all this time? Kind of looked like a fraud last year. Maybe this is me just not paying a ton of attention to the Astros this year, but Altuve's been really good again this year. And he's doing it a little differently than he did in the past. He's batting just 274, which is kind of low for him. It's still good. And he only has 5 steals. You remember, he used to be super fast. And his sprint speed is down significantly, but he's got a career high 10% walk rate. He has tied his career high with 31 home runs, and he's playing solid defense. And so the end result this year is his 3rd best season by FWAR ever at 5.2, and his 5th best season by Baseball Reference WAR at 4.4. So in the last month, he's got a 151 WRC plus with 6 home runs. So yeah, maybe he bounced back. Maybe he still has a chance to make the Hall. I think he's only 31. It's going to take some more production, but I don't know. It just kind of crept up on me that he was having a really good year again. My bad is Dallas Keuchel. So from a current Astro to a former Astro, Keuchel signed a 3-year, $55 million deal with the White Sox prior to 2020. And it seemed like a decent deal at the time. He was a former Cy Young winner. He wasn't pitching at that level anymore. He had gone to the Braves for a year, but he put up a fantastic 1.99 ERA last year in limited innings, because the short season. Although Chicago sucks. all the underlying metrics said that he was getting really lucky, and it's kind of all flipped on him this year. He's got a 5.13 ERA. And his expected ERA of 6.07 is the worst of any qualified starter in baseball this year. He's got the worst strikeout rate among qualified starters by a full strikeout, 5.24 per 9. That's a full strikeout below Zach Greinke, who's number 2. And he's got the highest walk and home run rates of his career, at least since he was a rookie. And so he signed through next year at $18 million, but there's a $20 million team option for 2023. The thing is, that team option becomes guaranteed if he passes a physical after 2022 and he throws 320 innings total between this year and next year. And this year he's at 160.1. So he's exactly halfway there. So it'll be really interesting to see if he keeps pitching like this, what the White Sox do to manipulate his innings next year. So they don't have to see him in 2023. So I thought that was kind of funny. And my ugly is Devin Williams. So I know if people missed that, he got drunk and punched a wall and broke his hand. And to me, it's just like, come on, man, you got to hold your liquor better than that. It's and I get it. I've been there. You catch a buzz and feel like you're Superman. I remember when I was 14, I got drunk and put on my brother's giant shoes and tried to sprint in front of my house and fell and scraped up my hip like crazy. So I get it. But again, he's 27 and, he's one of the better relievers in baseball. His team is going to the playoffs. He's got this unhittable pitch and he's a pitcher. Did he not watch Bull Durham? Why are you punching anything as a pitcher? Yeah. It's just absolutely insane to me. And in the playoffs, relievers are so important in the playoffs. One pitch can completely change your team's fortunes, and Milwaukee missing out on him is huge. So yeah, I mean that's ugly.
Yeah, the airbender out for a significant period of time is gonna hurt the chances for the Brewers, especially when they have a pretty good bullpen and he helps them shorten it up a little bit. Okay, Uber, what is your good, bad, and ugly?
All right, my good. I went to the Schwindy City in Chicago for Frank Schwendel. Been carrying my fantasy team to the finish line. I bring him up because he was in the Tigers system a couple years ago. We had a writer here. Was it John Wenzel? I forget John's last name. It's been a while. He was a proponent of bringing up Frank Schwendel. I had never heard of the guy at that point, and I thought the guy was crazy. Now here he is. He's played 50-something games in Chicago, slashing 358, 407, 642. I don't know if it's sustainable for him. I mean, obviously not that high. It's not sustainable, but is he a 290 hitter going forward? I doubt it, but it's been kind of fun just to hear all the jokes in Chicago. I thought Schwindy City was pretty good. So good for him. My bad was going to be Devin Williams.
Totally sorry.
No, not a problem. What's worse, him punching a wall after having a few pops, or Trevor Bauer mangling his hand with a drone just before the playoffs? I mean,
yeah, either one's ridiculous.
I mean, how dumb can you be? So since I don't have a bad, I'll tell you my story today. I leave work, I go to the grocery store. I am admittedly a pumpkin spice addict. Okay. So I get some pumpkin spice coffee creamer, and I'm walking down the aisle and I see pumpkin spice Special K cereal. So I've never had that. I got to have that. So I get to the checkout, and this young guy is the cashier. He looks at me, he looks down, he goes, "You like pumpkin spice?" "Oh yeah, I do. I'm kind of an addict to it. I love it." He goes, "Yeah, so are all the girls in my dorm." Wow, I got a shot at the grocery store.
Oh, wow. Man.
That one hurt, man.
Ooh.
But I took it. I told him, yeah, then those girls are smart. That's all I could say. It's the best I could do on the spot.
Not bad.
Well played. Well played. It's pumpkin spice season. I don't get it. Like, I like pumpkin pie, and that's about it. So.
You don't like pumpkin beer?
No.
I like a good pumpkin ale.
No, I've had it before. Some of the pumpkin ales, and it depends if the wheat content, because I'm allergic to some of the stuff. So, but real quick, before we get to Gabriella, who is going to be with us in just 2 seconds, the good, the bad, the ugly for me really quickly is this. The good, Marcus Semien has carried, he now set a record for Toronto for most home runs by a second baseman. So that's pretty awesome. And hopefully he's a future Tiger. And I like Marcus Semien's game quite a bit. The bad is been this entire, and it's like this Cardinal fans. And I say the bad reason why the Cardinal fans are bad, and that pertains to Adam Wainwright, who was complaining that Fangraphs doubted him. It's stats. Numbers change. Okay.
Yeah.
Numbers change, Adam. That's what happens with numbers. Okay.
Yeah, nope.
They're allowed to change. So
also there's no statistical model that predicts a 17-game winning streak.
Exactly what I was
exactly.
Say. The fact Adam, that their stats were their odds are so low was because it took a 17-game winning streak to change them.
Mm-hmm.
Get oversensitive about something really stupid, to me at least. And the ugly really has been the Oakland A's. And I say that because they made all those moves to make themselves wild card. Usually they pull it off, but they're out of the wild card contention. So, speaking of the wild card, who joins us now on the stream is Gabrielle. I said that right? Just want to make
Gabrielle,
sure.
yeah.
Okay, I don't know why. Sometimes I overthink something like that, but you can find her. She does a lot of. You wear a lot of hats, and it's always interesting when there's never a dull moment for you. So she is the editor over at This Ball Is Out of Here, which is a Phillies site for Fansided, as well as the Bo Sox Injection, and you're still hosting Lockdown Red Sox, correct?
No, I'm not actually. One of my really good friends is the host now. I stopped doing it when I started working as an editor at Fansided.
Oh, sorry. My apologies.
Oh, it's fine. I loved hosting that show.
No, you did a really good job with it. It was part of you and Stacy both on. She hosted Locked On Yankees, and she does a really good job with just. She's doing the Internet Baseball Writers Association hosting duties, and she's done a really good job.
Oh, wow.
With that.
She's
So,
great.
yeah.
I love Stacy.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I remember we did a pod with her. We talked for an hour and a half after the pod, and we were just her memory is just insane. She was remembering these. We're asking about Billboard charts from 1981. Just making conversation, and it just was just like top 10 1982, and just knew it. So
yeah, Stacy's brilliant.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. Chris, without further ado, why don't you go ask the question we asked our first time guests?
Hi, Gabrielle. Yeah, we always like to hear about our guests' earliest baseball memory. So if you have something that sticks out.
Ooh. Trying to think. I guess my earliest baseball memory would be playing Stratomatic with my dad. I'm actually at my parents' house right now, and my dad had like every single player card ever for Stratomatic. Nice. He even had the entire Negro Leagues collection, which is how I learned about that too. And my dad is a historian, so he would just tell me all of these amazing baseball stories. He would tell me stories about going to games with his dad, seeing Carl Yastrzemski in the World Series growing up, like getting to skip school to go to, Red Sox World Series games. So I think that's probably my first like early memory, or sitting behind an obstructed view at Fenway for one of my synagogue outings. My synagogue is right down the street from Fenway, and they would do like, group ticket packages sometimes for games. And so sometimes we would do those as well as like our normal tickets and go and sit. And I remember sitting behind like a massive pole kind of in the right field corner by the pesky pole, but like way back and not being able to see like half the field. And I think Pedro was pitching. So that was really cool.
Nice.
Awesome. Yeah.
Pedro games, obviously elite.
It's funny, I grew up, we grew up out here in Detroit with Tiger Stadium, and that also had plenty of obstructed views. Comerica doesn't, but yeah, I do also remember being like, what's this pole doing here?
My dad actually collects baseball caps, and one of his favorites to wear is a like vintage style Detroit Tigers cap. And I have to always remind him when we go to games at Fenway, I'm like, can you at least just wear a Red Sox game to like a Red Sox cap to a Red Sox game? Like, you want to wear the Tigers cap around town? Fine. But like last time we went to a game, I had to stop him leaving the house. He was wearing a Celtics cap, like a Boston Celtics cap. And I was like, okay, right city, wrong sport. Let's
close enough.
Let's rethink this for a second.
And let me ask you a question. How many caps does he have? Because this is a question that I always talk to my wife about. My wife and I debate. She goes, you have too many hats. I have 100.
There's no such thing.
Thank you. Okay. All right. That's all I need to know.
I think he has like 20 maybe. He has like some Patriots ones, a lot of Red Sox ones. I personally have at least 5, and I have 2 Woo Sox caps, our AAA team, and I have like at least 3 Red Sox caps, including my favorite one, which actually says Red Sox in Hebrew on it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love that one.
My favorite Red Sox affiliate is the Portland Sea Dogs. I love that logo. It's really cool. It's really kind of a throwback. But speaking of the Red Sox, the one of the things we want to ask you about was coming into the season, it seemed like Boston, some of the projections were Boston was going to finish towards the bottom of the AL East. And they've exceeded expectations. And right now, as we speak, they're trailing Baltimore 62, which I'm sure that your house right now is on edge at the moment. But nevertheless, has fans been surprised, or is this not a surprise based off what has been going on with Boston this season?
So I think it's kind of this weird mix. I literally tweeted right before we got on saying, I try to keep reminding myself that the Red Sox weren't supposed to be good this year, but it doesn't make this any less frustrating, this being the game that I was watching before I hopped on with you guys. I think it's kind of annoying just because on the one hand, no, the Red Sox were not projected to be a good team this year. Certainly not to be, they have 89 wins. I don't think anyone foresaw that. At the same time, they've had the bones of a good, at least offense for the entire time. Yes, Mookie Betts is not here. Mitch Moreland, Brock Holt, Andrew Benintendi, Jackie Bradley Jr. Like, they did lose a lot of those championship pieces. They have Xander Bogaerts and Rafael Devers. They have Hunter Renfroe. They have Kike Hernandez. He hit a leadoff home run tonight. He leads, I think, either the American League or Major League Baseball in leadoff home runs. They've always had a good offense. Do they have the best offense? No, but it's the pitching that has been such a problem over the last last year, the year before, large parts of this year, losing Chris Sale, losing Eduardo Rodriguez last year for viral myocarditis. Like, they had some bad luck. They had some bad injuries. They had some, money troubles, if you want to call it that, when you're valued at like $4 billion. So I think it's a weird mix of they weren't supposed to be good, but they should be good. Then they were good. Now they're playing terribly, but they're supposed to be. It's very Red Sox. It's the basic summary, but very frustrating tonight, just because it's like the Orioles aren't going to be bad forever. I mean, they have Ryan Mountcastle's like a probable top 3 rookie of the year for the American League kind of situation, but the Red Sox have been facing guys all week, pitchers who have ERAs over 6, and they're literally doing nothing against them. And like the guy tonight who started, this was his first time throwing 6 innings in a game in his career. Why? Because for some reason, the Red Sox love to make bad pitchers look good. And they love to make bad players look good. It's like this weird charity thing that they do. I'm like, you don't need to be nice. Just win the games. Like, this team is not trying to be in a wild card. They've lost over 100 games. They've been compared to the Cleveland Spiders. Stop being friendly and hit the ball.
Especially when their ERA, Baltimore's ERA for starters is over 6. I mean,
I wrote about this for Bo Sox.
Yeah.
This morning, I said, this is their worst ERA in franchise history. What are you doing? They have a 6.06 ERA.
They found all these pictures on Craigslist for the last month.
Oh my God. Literally. They're like, do you have an arm? Can you hold a baseball and then move it in the direction of that square, that shaped thing, that like, what's it? It's like a hexagon. I don't know. Can you throw it in the direction of that white thing on the ground? Yes. All right, you're hired. Here's $500,000. You're hired.
That's exactly right.
No, and that's where I was going to pull that from your article this morning. And I look at a guy like Nick Pivetta, who's done pretty well. I mean, he pitched a pretty solid outing, all things considering what has been going on. And so, to talk about you're talking about the pitching earlier. Has there been a couple of pitchers that have caught you in terms of just giving you more value than anticipated? Because I looked at this rotation at the beginning of the year on paper, it was just a bunch of, all right, well, it looked like it was kind of, I don't want to say hodgepodge. I don't like lack of saying that, but I mean, it just seemed like with a farm system that had definitely a lot of offensive talent, but in terms of pitching, it seemed to be lacking. And with Sale on the IL earlier in the year, where this has to be kind of like they're pitching over their head a little bit, right?
Well, yeah, and I think you saw that where the first few months of the season, I mean, they were in first place until July. After like the second week or the first week of the season, they held first place for the entire first half of the season and then into the second half, and no one saw that coming. I mean, they were last place last year. Obviously, the pitching was going to regress after a while, but they also, they had a COVID outbreak. Eduardo Rodriguez really struggled coming back. He's been bad after what he went through last year. Nick Pivetta has been fine. He's still been better this year than he's ever been for the Phillies. I mean, people are like, oh, he's bad. There's also games like last week against the Yankees. He gave up 1 earned run in like 5-something innings. And they lost the game because the Red Sox scoring was like abysmal. The Red Sox scored 12 runs against the Mets last week. I think it was like Wednesday. And then for like the next 4 games, they scored a combined 11 runs. You can't do that if the people that you're facing are literally Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton, and you're in the short porch. Like, what do you do? Oh no, they were at Fenway. It was the last series of the season. But still, I mean, look, you're in your own home ballpark. That's even worse. I did not go. I almost went. And then I was like, you know what? I don't feel good about this. And tickets are like $200 before ticket fees. And
before ticket fees?
Yeah, it's Fenway Park. It's insane. Beers are like $16. You can get like a lobster roll, but it'll cost you like $25. Yeah, so I didn't go, and it was good.
Yeah, by the way, one of our comments from on YouTube, money troubles, if you want to call that when you're valued at $4 billion. So
yeah, I'm harsh. Yeah. I'm harsh.
No, but it's especially with the Blue Jays too, who I'm honestly right now the Yankees are up 5-2 in the top of the 6th inning in Toronto.
Has 2 homers today. Yeah.
I really want, and one of them was like a 455 bomb too. But I want to try. The reason why I want Toronto is because based off it's such a fun, young, talented team. And I know they're in the same division, and it's made the AL East just a beast. But in terms of what your impressions are coming out, if the Yankees and Red Sox are going to have the wild card, and they're going to have the nation on, it's going to be on their pedestal here. If this is going to be the case, it's going to be a tough call. I mean, I don't know, gentlemen. I think in terms of guys, I think that if Toronto doesn't pull this out or Seattle, it's just, it's unfortunate, and so, I don't know. I was gonna say, hey, what do you guys think about Toronto's chances here?
Well, I mean, I would have thought tonight would have been the they got Robbie Ray on the mound. It seemed like tonight would have been the night to do it. So that doesn't seem like a good omen. Hey.
Yeah, Robbie Ray has been so good all year. You start in and start out, but actually 2 of his starts this year that went awry were against the Yankees. So they've been kind of his kryptonite this year. And
it's funny because when the Yankees and Red Sox played each other the night that I think it was the series opener when it was Eovaldi and Cole, the Yankees, like Cole had struggled against the Red Sox in the season. He had a pretty high ERA against them. He got lit up by Kike Hernandez and Rafael Devers in one of the games. Meanwhile, Nathan Eovaldi had a 2.05 ERA going into his last start against the Yankees over his first 5 starts against them. He gets demolished. He gave up something like 7 earned runs in 2 2/3 innings, gets knocked out of the game. All of a sudden it's a bullpen game against the Yankees, the last thing you want, like the last stretch of the season. So, I mean, my dad always likes to say anyone can get you. And this is Robbie Ray, prime candidate for this right now. Everyone's tired. It's the last, 4 games of the season. But my God, the Red Sox are picking a great time to play absolutely terribly.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you had a question there. I was just going to say the one of the things I was going to ask is in terms of they're talking about expanding the playoffs, because you look at the Yankees and Red Sox, and now essentially it's going to be one game and that's it, and one of them has to go home, and it just seems unfortunate. But if the playoffs expanded, would you be fine with that? Because it seems like I think it would make the postseason in terms of teams getting to that wild card, that one game, one and done kind of situation, pay off a little bit better.
I mean, honestly, I don't even like the expanded playoffs now. I don't. It feels like we're giving participation trophies. Like literally half the freaking league is in the expanded. Like my dad was saying to me today, he's like, so I heard this thing about the Red Sox and the wild card. Like my dad's kind of not super, super dialed into baseball anymore. Like he prefers historical baseball. So he's like, they're saying the Red Sox never made the wild card. He's like, but what about 2004? I was like, no, Dad, they're saying since the new model where there's like a play in game. He's like, well, that seems stupid. And I agree because, now basically like with the Dodgers, for example, the Dodgers could be in a wild card game. And if they happen to lose that one game, one of the best teams in baseball is suddenly out of the playoffs. When in reality, like, yes, a Cardinals-Dodgers play-in game is great baseball in its like singularity. But in terms of the greater postseason structure, you want the best teams that have earned their way in all season long to be there, and reducing their chances by making them play more games against more opponents down the stretch is just a recipe for disaster. Like, I'm not saying, the Cardinals are awesome, but the thing is, like, there was that, you guys were mentioning this right before I came on, that Wainwright quote about Fangraphs, where he's like upset that Fangraphs like crunched numbers, which is literally their job. I understand him being like, we prove people wrong, but bringing it up when it's like mathematically what they calculated, that's not really going to help your argument. It's just going to make it sound like you don't like math. I don't like math either, but that's not how I'm going to talk. Yeah, they won 17 games in a row, and that was awesome. But as a whole, were they having like a postseason year? No. Kind of sometimes. Yeah. The Red Sox are not having. They were until like July. They're not anymore. I mean, it's just, you don't need to expand it this much. We don't need to be doing this. Like the Marlins were in the postseason last year, and like, we just. I think eventually the entire league's going to be in the postseason. Then it's just the regular season. It's like if you verified everyone on Twitter, it wouldn't mean anything.
I think you're right on the money. I think it cheapens the playoffs a little bit. You're going to end up with 82 win teams at the back end of the playoffs, and do we want to see that? I would much rather personally see it be harder to get into playoffs. It'd be more thrilling to watch two 100 win teams in the same division battle it out through the whole month of September, and one of them have to go home, as heartbreaking as that would be for them, versus seeing, two 84 win teams duke it out in September for a 1-game playoff.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, look at the NL East. Like, the Braves are fine, but they have like 85 wins.
But of course, the flip side is we're never going back. Unfortunately, it's only going one way.
No, never going back.
Yeah, I'm always a little bit torn on this because I remember the old you just had to win your division to make the playoffs days, and in that scenario, the Dodgers aren't making the playoffs this year with 102 wins, and that happened to the Tigers a couple times way back in the day, and it just feels like a bummer.
1961 comes to mind.
Yeah. So I did like the original wild card. I'm not a fan at all of the 1-game play-in. I don't think 1-game series have any place in baseball whatsoever. When the game could be decided by a ball bouncing off a base, it just doesn't seem.
Or off the light tower in the Trop.
Yeah, anything like that. Baseball's so weird, and I don't know. You got to reward the teams for playing well for an entire season.
My feeling is if you're going to do a wild card series, then it should be 2 out of 3.
Mm-hmm.
Just make it or 3 out of 5. Make it like the other division series, whatever. I mean, obviously, then one of those teams would have to play in a division series, right. So that's very tiring for them. But 2 out of 3, I think, is fair.
I agree.
Plus, it gives the other teams longer times to rest before they have to go into the sprint of the postseason, which, of course, is an exhausting exercise in terror. So,
I mean, and it's even the one thing I think they could do, too, is if not to get too far off track, but if you think about it, if they would do that, then maybe make a neutral site an indoor stadium, because if you're thinking about winter and what have you, I mean, who wants to play? I know that one of my biggest things about baseball right now that I can't stand is that baseball's going in November. At the same time, baseball, there's high schools that are playing all year long, so I guess it's kind of goes hand in hand at this point. But still, it'd be cool to have it at a neutral site too, just to kind of see how the effect would be. And we saw that last year with at the Barbecue Grill Stadium, which was it Global? What's the name of the rink? Global Life.
Globe Life.
Yeah. It looks like
Is it Arlington? Is it Globe Life at Arlington Park or something? I feel like it's kind of like the Oriole Park at Camden Yards or whatever. Look, I mean, I remember in 2018, Clayton Kershaw warming up at Fenway Park, and it's like late October for the World Series. The man's wearing a tank top. Everyone else is wearing snow jackets, and I'm like, dude. You have nothing to prove. We know the weather is terrible. Just put on some sleeves. He's wearing like a cut-off tank top that he was the one that cut. Like, it was like he ripped off the sleeves. And I was like, you realize everyone else here is putting on more layers. And it's just, and my firm belief is that any ballpark that's been built since the existence of retractable roofs has zero excuse to not put a retractable roof on your ballpark. The number of games I have been to at Fenway Park where I have literally been soaked to the bone sitting in pouring rain because I'm such a freak, I won't leave. So I'll literally sit there until my jeans are fused to my legs with rainwater, like wet hair, coat over my head, because I refuse to pay $15 for a plastic poncho that won't fold back up into the case. And then I went to like a Mariners game a month ago, which, by the way, maybe I'm the reason that they're so good lately, because I did go to a Mariners game, which I'd never done before. The retractable roof is awesome.
Yeah,
I find it impressive. It's like it's a feat of engineering. Meanwhile, my ballpark, the seats are 800 years old.
But does it have character? I always hear that about Fenway.
No, Fenway has amazing character. I'm not, it's the best ballpark ever. The only thing is, if your team is valued at $4 billion, build a freaking roof. They could build it. They could do like an orb. They could do like a half shell, just like on stilts, like a tent. You could just put a tent.
Yeah. No, when Minnesota built their stadium and the Pohlads, the owners, I think the second richest ownership at the time in MLB, it would have cost $100 million to put a roof on Target Field. and they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't even spend, I think it was $9 million to have it fitted so that a roof could eventually go on if they decided to. They wouldn't even pop for that. So a lot of times that just comes down to ownership cheapness.
Well, the Red Sox ownership has spent literally millions, probably billions at this point when they bought the team. When they bought the team, for starters, they paid more than twice what had ever been paid for a team in franchise. They spent like almost $700 million buying the team. Now it's crazy that that's how much was double the previous cost of a team. And then they spent millions and millions and millions of dollars. Like they did the monster seats. They did all of these fancy club levels, suites, all of those renovations. They've made it, it's a stunningly beautiful ballpark. They've added thousands of seats worth of space in different ways, and they've done it in a really classy way. But the point being, the fact remains that I've sat at Fenway Park on opening days when it was flurrying with snow and my hands were turning blue under my gloves. And I mean, it's cold now. I'm 10 minutes away from the ballpark and it's September 30th and it's cold and chilly. And it impacts, you know, how you're going to play compared to, you know, if you're in LA or if you're in a climate controlled. My dad's from Minnesota. So he can, you know, he grew up playing hockey where his hair would freeze after practice and stuff like that. It is, it's kind of a weird disadvantage for certain teams. And then if you're a team that comes from a warmer climate or a climate controlled, you know, like Minute Maid, you come to a place like Fenway or you go to somewhere else from it. Even players like, you know, Garrett Richards was saying he didn't own a winter coat before he came to the Red Sox. Personally, I don't think that's his biggest problem. But he's like, yeah, I came from the Angels in Anaheim. The weather there is perfect, like 360 out of 365 days a year.
You know, and I'm sorry, Chris, were you going to say something?
Oh, you know, I was going to switch gears, unless you had more to talk about. Well, because Gabrielle, I know you also covered the Phillies. So I didn't know if you'd seen that article in The Athletic today and how much you thought about it.
The article about the farm system.
Yeah.
So it's literally the first thing I was about to read this afternoon. And then we had kind of like a little apartment situation that had resulted in us having to run to my parents' house for the night. So I actually haven't, but I've kind of got the cliff notes, basically just some of the stuff about like toxic, you know, bad player development, all that kind of stuff. And I've been covering that in other ways. I mean, I covered the Preston Mattingly hiring earlier this week. And it's interesting because one of the few things that the Phillies actually do well is how they treat their minor leaguers. And I'm not saying that any team treats their minor leaguers well, but advocates for minor leaguers, which some of my friends are part of, you know, kind of the leadership group of that organization. Advocates for minor leaguers tweeted earlier this season a graphic ahead of a Mets-Phillies series being like, which team would you rather play for in the minor leagues? And it was showing, you know, what the minor league levels at each of their levels of the minors, what they did for their players. And the Phillies take care of, like, they give housing stipends, they give hotel stipends, they pay for extended spring training. They're the only National League East team that pays for extended spring training right now. The Mets do none of those things, literally none of them. The Mets actually, and I'm not passing the buck here, I'm just kind of pointing out, the Mets during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic, like May 2020, cut something like 37 minor leaguers who would obviously have nowhere to go. The season was already canceled. They wanted to save $15,000 a week. And obviously for normal people, that's a lot of money. For the Mets, who were about to be bought by Steve Cohen, to say, oh, we can't afford $15,000 that you know that they're not going to miss. Meanwhile, these players are out in the cold. They can't get other jobs because no other minor league organizations are hiring during a pandemic when they have no season. You know, there was that story about how the Mets built that beautiful new clubhouse in Port St. Lucie for their major leaguers and wouldn't let the minor leaguers into it because it should encourage them. Like, and my friend Ty Kelly, who played for both the Mets and the Phillies, tweeted and was like, pretty sure starving is enough of a motivation to want to be in that major league clubhouse, like literally surviving off of SpaghettiOs. And he was lucky enough to actually make big league money for a few years. He's far from the norm too, but when he was, you know, I mean, these guys are broke and living under the poverty line. So long story short, haven't finished that Athletic article yet, but my thoughts on the Phillies are it's clearly a very problematic organization, but they're also clearly committed to making changes. You know, Preston Mattingly is a guy, first of all, he's like baseball royalty. His dad is a legend. He's considered an up and comer. They poached him from the Padres. They're putting him in charge of player development. That's huge for a team that statistically is terrible at developing prospects. Like quite literally, they have guys, first round overall picks, like Mickey Moniak. The guy can't play. I've seen him. I saw him play this season. He can't play. He was the first overall pick in the entire 2016 draft. These guys are considered top prospects. All of a sudden, they get to AAA, they get to the big leagues. Spencer Howard, the guy's velocity absolutely falls off a cliff after like the third inning. They couldn't fix it. They traded him to the Rangers. You know, he's actually, I think, worse since the trade, which is insane. You have guys that come here and fall apart. The entire culture of that organization is messed up. And, you know, obviously they're doing better in terms of like, look, their NL East rivals are, you know, full of sexual harassers. So it could be a lot worse, but considering
low
baseball, right. It's a very low bar. They've cleared it that we know of. But, you know, Dombrowski is the kind of guy who comes in to get results. And clearly, in addition to not getting results, there's a lot of toxicity in this organization. He's been cleaning house all summer. He's been getting rid of guys. He was like, you know, demoting or, you know, reassigning assistant GMs to be like special advisors, which basically means like, we'll keep paying you, but you're meaningless. Because God forbid any old white guys just like actually get fired for being terrible.
Tigers did the same thing. Yeah.
You know, like we're just going to reassign you. Like Bob Boone. It's like, dude.
Bob Boone's still in the organization?
No. He quit the Nationals because he didn't want to get a vaccine.
Okay. I did not hear about that.
He literally was like resigning from being like, I think it was senior vice president of the Nationals, like probably making bank to do probably mostly nothing except be Bob Boone. And his own son has a heart defect and has a pacemaker and had open heart surgery like less than a year ago. So he's high risk for COVID and he's vaccinated. His own dad won't get vaccinated for him.
And Bob Boone's old.
He's
75.
old and overweight, so he's at double high risk for COVID, and he has a next of kin who is super high risk. Won't get it. Quit his job.
By the way, the on-field instructor for the Phillies was former Tiger Chris Truby. So there's your random factoid that, for whatever reason, I saw the name. I was like, I'm like, that guy was part of some horrible Tiger teams. What's up, Chris?
Oh, I was just gonna say, if you get a chance, if you subscribe to The Athletic, it's an interesting article to read because the Tigers have gone through a bunch of player development changes recently on their own right, and I love The Athletic. We read it every day in our house. Meanwhile, I think Andrew McCutcheon just homered. So the Phillies will go quietly and will not go quietly in tonight. They'll probably still go into the night and get eliminated tonight, but they're at least they are raising some Braves ERAs while they're at it.
No, and one of the things that you're pointing out how bad the farm system is, they're the only organization in all of baseball that have a minor league pitcher reach 100 innings.
To not have
100 innings for a pitcher. That's just insane. Wow. And, you know, and speaking of, for the Phillies this year, what was the expectations, the division or wild card? I mean, right now, they're getting some really good performances. I mean, individually speaking, you talk about Bryce Harper, talk about Zach Wheeler, who, by the way, I'm glad that you mentioned this. You tweeted about this. Marcus Stroman tweeting out. Stroh. But it just seems like all these individual performances. I mean, especially Harper. Harper gets a lot of crap from people, and sometimes rightfully so. But I think he's had a really good year. But has that been overshadowed based off their team struggles?
I think the Phillies are just kind of a perennially mediocre and therefore not very interesting team, at least, you know, aside from the kind of golden era where they were winning the division every year for 5 years, like 2007 to 2011. But in general, I mean, they are one of the oldest franchises in baseball. They've been around since the 1880s. They have 2 championships in their entire franchise history, and it took them 97 years to win the first one. I mean, this is a team that, like, if they weren't in a major city, they would have been sent somewhere else already. Look at the Philadelphia Athletics have been in 3 cities. I think
Yeah,
3.
yeah,
Yeah,
3. Yeah,
Kansas
three.
City,
City and Oakland.
Oakland, after Philadelphia. Yeah, I mean, look, it's a city that first of all, I love Philadelphia. I have tons of family in Philadelphia. It's one of my favorite places to go and just kind of explore. But it's just not, the team should just be so much better than it is. And it just feels like every year, especially the September thing. I mean, they've got these September struggles. It's like their edition of Sunday Scaries. First of all, Aaron Nola, every year, terrible in September. This year is no exception. He is just abysmal. But this year, on the whole, terrible. But, you know, Harper, I'm totally going to own up to this. I was not a huge Harper fan until I started covering the Phillies. When he was younger, I thought he was kind of obnoxious because he was like, you know, I mean, look, if you're on like the cover of Sports Illustrated when you're like 12 years old, you're going to have kind of, you know, an ego, and I get that. But at the same time, like, I root for like kind of humble underdogs. That's like my thing. You know, I grew up in the pre-2004 era of Boston. So I like underdogs. I like the guys that are kind of next to the superstars, you know, and that's obviously never going to be Harper. He's having an unreal season. He coming into today, Thursday, he's leading all of Major League Baseball in slugging, OPS plus. You know, he actually has more doubles now than he did in his first MVP season in 2015. He has 40 doubles. I think that's second most in Major League Baseball. I don't know. He and Juan Soto have the most walks. Obviously, Juan Soto has like 140 walks, literally. He and Soto are the only guys with more than 90 walks. He's not striking out that much. His numbers in the second half are absolutely absurd. He has 34 home runs, and this is all with him having some injuries lingering throughout the spring. So, you know, if he's not injured in the spring, all of these numbers are even higher, which is absurd because he has an OBS over 1,000, and he has for like 2 months now at this point. The guy is having an amazing season, and I think one of the reasons that it's getting overshadowed is because like his RBI numbers are always low. And part of that is like a clutch thing. He had this weird stretch at the beginning of the season, something like dating back to his last 2 home runs of 2020. He had like 16 solo home runs. He literally had not hit a multi-run homer, like dating back to the last 2 homers of last season. That was wild. He was close to tying like one of the Alou brothers records or something for like, it was like 16 or 17 consecutive solo bombs. He didn't do it, but he got close. Which partially you can look at that and be like, okay, does this guy only homer when he wants to homer? Or is he on a team where no one gets on base and therefore there's no one to drive in when he homers? And if you have that many home runs, you kind of start to think to yourself, well, and the team is not winning. That's the other thing. If you factor in the team's not winning and you have a lot of mediocre hitters on your team, then you can kind of put together, it's not that the guy is selfish and he only homers when he wants to homer. It's that there's literally nobody on base. So he's just doing what he can. The guy is Zach Wheeler and Bryce Harper are the 2 reasons that on the last day of September 2021, we're even talking about the Phillies, or even the last whole month that I've been, that I've been talking about them. Zach Wheeler, if Zach Wheeler had a bullpen, Zach Wheeler would be the unequivocal Cy Young. The man gets screwed until like this week or last week. The Phillies were leading MLB in blown saves and had been for about 5 months. They hit 34 blown saves, which tied the major league record that was set by the 2004 Rockies. And then somehow the Nationals were like, you know what? We actually want 35 blown saves. And they like massively overtook the Phillies. The Phillies were in the lead for like since something like June. It's like astonishing. They had multiple games, 5 or 6 games with 2 blown saves. They had a 3 blown save game. They blew 3 saves in one game. I didn't even know that was possible. I didn't even know you could legally do that in a game of baseball.
It's the Todd Jones special.
Yeah, and yet they did it. Mm-hmm. I think these 2 guys are having amazing seasons. I think that Harper should win the MVP. I think that Wheeler, at the very least, has to be the runner-up to Corbin Burns. I think there are serious arguments for Wheeler over Corbin Burns. But these 2 guys are having award-winning seasons. And if they even had a remotely good bullpen, this team's winning the division. They have the worst bullpen in baseball. Hector Neris went from like a sub-3 ERA in May to an 8+ ERA in June. Oof. And then went back down to a sub-1 ERA in August. The guy had 2 months where his ERA was like above 6 and above 8. And every other month his ERA was like under 3. But for those 2 months, they literally had no one. Jose Alvarado walks everybody.
I was gonna say,
you know, they have a bunch of pitching injuries. Archie Bradley is fine. But, you know, then they got Ian Kennedy from the Rangers. Ian Kennedy's been terrible. He's been absolutely horrible. He completely fell apart. Kyle Gibson, his ERA is 2 points higher fully than it was like 2.87 in Texas. It's like 4.87 in Philadelphia.
Well, yeah,
they have bad luck. Everyone comes here and falls apart.
I don't remember if it was last show or 2 weeks ago, but I was talking about Ranger Suarez, you know, who was doing really well in the bullpen.
Good. I totally forgot about him. He's no one's talking about him. He could be a Cy Young.
Well, yeah,
he could
been
be like
awesome.
a Steve Bedrosian type and just win the Cy Young as a reliever. I mean, the guy's ERA has been under 2 the entire season, and he moved back to the rotation and threw a complete game shutout on 96 pitches last weekend.
Efficiency.
He's never thrown more than 6 innings in his entire career. He throws a complete game shutout Maddox. And yeah, it's against the Pirates, so, you know, it's fine. I could do it too. But the point being, like, the longevity, this is a guy who for most of the season was throwing like 2/3 of an inning in 3, you know, an inning in 2/3, whatever, like never more than 3 innings. He moves to the rotation at the beginning of August. He ramps up from throwing 3 innings to 6 innings and then to 9 full innings. That's insane. And his ERA is still that low. That to me is like the most impressive thing I've ever seen, because this is a guy whose role changed throughout the season. Like, he was a middle guy. He was a setup man. He was the closer. He has done literally everything for this team. The fact that nobody seems to talk about this guy or even know that he exists, to me, outside the National League East, is absurd, because this guy is like a dark horse Cy Young candidate to me.
Yeah, you put him on my radar, Chris, because I started looking at his stats. And yeah, he's over 5-year or 5 WAR. And by the way, awesome Steve Bedrosian flashback reference. That's
well, you know, Cam Bedrosian's on the Phillies now, so
right. Oh no, that's still a pretty awesome reference. And this is where, and I know you've had experience with writers. You've been in the room in these press boxes where you talk to writers. The biggest question in terms of even covering the teams, my question to you is, when they look at his win and loss record for Wheeler, is that still that mentality that still comes in your experience with in writing and seeing baseball? Do you still hear it going, well, wins and losses matter?
God, it's such an outdated stat. My Lord.
I know.
Personally, to the point where I hardly even know anymore what qualifies somebody to get the win or the loss. Like, a guy can be in the game for literally one batter and get the win. At that point, I'm like, no, you did nothing. You did nothing. You faced one person. You might have even thrown one pitch to get the guy to pop out, and you get a win? It's participation trophies all over again. Absolutely not. Not to mention, like, if you're going to do that, you also need player, like, non-pitcher wins and losses. Like, there was a game I went to, I think it was Labor Day at Fenway. It was Red Sox and either Rays or Blue Jays. I don't know. It was some division rival, and it wasn't the Yankees or the Orioles. But the Red Sox put up like 6 or 7 runs in the first like 2 innings, and they blew the game, went to extras, and lost. And thankfully, we left early because we had somewhere to be that night. I think it was Rosh Hashanah or something. But they literally blew like a 7. It was Chris Sale, and he had gotten. Thankfully, it was like unearned runs. But he basically, because of the outfielders like misplayed a ball or something, and it was like 4 runs or 5 runs in like 2 innings time, basically. And none of it was Chris Sale's fault. Thankfully, they changed the ruling. The runs were not earned because his ERA would have skyrocketed. But it was like, if a pitcher either gets credit or gets a loss when a game is won or lost, you know, by whatever virtues, calculate that. Why is it just them? There are players that are just as responsible, if not more. You can have the best pitcher on the planet. If the rest of your infield and outfield defense is terrible, at some point, your pitcher is going to get screwed through literally no fault of their own. And that happened to Chris Sale in that game. And I was like, okay, so I think it was like Alex Verdugo or something. So I'm like, so Chris Sale is going to get like a no decision, or I think it was a no decision in this game. But like, how is this guy not getting a loss? Like, how is there no blemish on his record? Like, this just fades into his total season stat line.
it's just such a team sport, you know. And
it's a team sport unless you're the pitcher.
Blame goes back in like the 80s. They tried to come up with game-winning RBI as an official stat.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
And they just couldn't. Nobody could settle on what exactly that meant, and it just eventually kind of withered away and died because it just wasn't. You know, the game-winning RBI to you might not be the game-winning RBI to me, in the way we watch the game. And that was one reason why that stat went away. It's just hard to do that, and that's why exactly right. The pitcher wins are silly.
Well, remember
I
that
just think it's like, how can it be a team sport if only the pitcher is getting nailed win or loss? You know, Zach Wheeler has 10 losses this season, and the Phillies are 19-13 in his starts. He had a rough August, but other than that, there have been so many games where it's just like that guy's run support average is 404. He gets like no run support. He had like 3 games where they scored some absurd amount of runs. Other than that, they'd score like 1 or 2 runs for him. And I'm like, okay, but that's not his fault. Chris Sale had a 17 strikeout game in 2019 against the Rockies. He didn't walk a single batter. He got a no decision. That game went to extra innings, and they lost something like 4-3. And he got a no decision. He struck out 17 batters. How is that man getting a no decision? But none of the offense who never showed up for him the entire season, I give them a no decision. Like, no, you failed. Like, you lost. He didn't lose. If it's a team sport, then abolish pitcher wins and losses because they're the only ones getting him. And they don't even make sense anymore.
No, and I remember when Sandy Koufax, when he won the NL Cy Young in the 60s, what was astonishing was that basically if he didn't get one run, I mean, there's a lot of 2-1 games, or just like these 1-run games where if he wasn't going to get, he had to go out there and go, oh crap, I got to throw a complete game essentially to keep this team competitive because the Dodgers had no offense. And an era, that's why they lowered them out in 1969, but it's astonishing. That's even existing now.
There was a game, this is going way, way, way back. It's Babe Ruth. So in 2018, I'm at game 3 of the World Series, which ends up being the longest game in postseason history.
Mm-hmm.
And the game that it surpassed was also a Red Sox Dodgers game from like the 1916 World Series, I want to say, in which Babe Ruth pitched something like 14 innings and had an RBI. And it was truly one of those moments where it was like, F you, I have to do everything myself.
Hey, Shohei Ohtani could do that.
Exactly, right. But like there's literally one Shohei Ohtani. He's a unicorn, and like no other teams have him. I think the Red Sox are literally about to lose. It's just, you know, the point being, like, that, I mean, the National League, you have pitchers that hit. The American League, you obviously don't. Pedro Martinez is famous for saying during the 2004 ALCS before the comeback, I think it was game 2 that he pitched, and he was Pedro. Like, he was great. The Red Sox offense didn't show up at all. And he said post-game, he's like, all I can do is go out there and pitch. I can't do anything if they don't score runs. Like, a pitcher's only real job, because no one really expects them to hit anyway. Like, you know, they're kind of like that dead weight at the bottom of the order, unless they're Greinke, basically. Or Ohtani. Like, nobody's expecting pitchers to hit. They're expecting to keep the other team off the board. Meanwhile, like, what the hell's the rest of the team doing? You know, look at the Red Sox tonight. Like, I mean, yeah, they lost. Like, Pivetta got tagged for, I think, 3 runs, but like, where was the Red Sox offense? The starter had like a 12 ERA.
Not to mention, Pivetta, by the way, had 16 swing and misses, and he deserved a better fate. Meanwhile, the starting pitcher you referred to,
the umpire was terrible too. I mean, he kept, like, everything that was a ball for Pivetta was a strike for the other guy. And I was like, are you kidding me, dude? It was like 6 feet above the top of the strike zone. The guy caught it at his face. Not his face, the umpire's face. He reached up. He's like,
yeah, make sure
he looked like he was getting ready to pass a basketball, but he's catching what apparently was not a strike 3.
I can't wait to see the ump card on that one. But the one last question before we get out of here and hopefully catch, I don't know what other games you're going to catch this evening, but what has been the biggest surprise and biggest disappointment for you so far this season? I mean, again, you watch so much baseball, and I'm sure outside of the 2 teams you cover, there's got to be something that has caught your attention.
I love the Blue Jays. All last winter on Locked On Red Sox, I was picking the Blue Jays to be the sleeper team in the American League, and I'm happy to say that they have largely proven me right, especially down the stretch. I mean, they have so much young talent. Vlad Jr., Bo. I love Ryu. I got to see him, speaking of complete game shutout Maddox games, I saw him throw a Maddox game in Los Angeles in 2019. He's so good. I think they're definitely one of my like happy kind of, even though they did like make history by hitting something like 8 home runs off the Red Sox in a single game over the summer. But other than that, I love the Blue Jays. I think they're great. Very happy that they got to go home finally. That was really special. I think, Nathan Eovaldi was a really great part of this season for the Red Sox. Like, this is the first year that he's been fully healthy with the Red Sox. I mean, 2018, he was healthy when he got here, but he'd been hurt. So this was his first year of like actually having a whole season since pre-2018. He got hurt in 2019. He got hurt last year. He started over 30 games this year. He's having an amazing season. I don't think he's quite Cy Young caliber. I'm sure he'll get a couple votes, but he's up there in the top 5 American League pitchers this year. And he's just been so great for this team. And I think a lot of people were definitely kind of questioning the extension that Dombrowski gave him after the 2018 season. And for a while, it didn't feel like it was going to pan out. But he's such a great part of this team. And this season, it finally felt like that kind of materialized because he was able to be healthy. And Chris Sale coming back, I mean, he is just like such an important part of this team, and what he brings to the table in terms of just like how fired up he is and how seriously he takes this game and winning and competing. We call him the monster. He's genuinely a terrifying character sometimes, but like in a good way. He literally, like, I feel like if you took an internal temperature and like tested like his core, the temperature, like the thermometer would just break from the heat. Like he's just, I feel like there are just like flames inside of him. That's like how fired up he is all the time. And having that, like, there's this famous gif I always use of him yelling in the dugout during the 2018 World Series when the team was playing like crap. Having a guy like him who just demands better, it just makes a difference. And having him back, I got to see his first game back in early August. And it was just like so great to see Chris Sale back because he was gone for literally 2 years. And it just didn't feel like, it was starting to feel like between that and the pandemic, like Chris Sale was just like a faint memory.
Yeah. There's a rumor.
It's like between his last game in August 2019 and then COVID happens, and you're kind of like, you kind of, how you really kind of think like everything pre-pandemic just feels like a different life.
Yeah.
So Chris Sale felt like part of that, and so seeing him come back and just like knowing that he's healthy, and I think 2022 will be a really big year for the Red Sox. They were never supposed to be this good anyway. I mean, they weren't good tonight, but on the whole, they have 89 wins. They were going to be lucky to have a 500 season. So
speaking of 22, Gabrielle, speaking of 22, over the last decade, I'd say one of the most popular Tigers amongst all the Tigers loyalists has been JD Martinez, probably in the top 3.
I was waiting for it.
And now he's in Boston, had a couple great years, had a down year during the COVID year, and obviously has come back a bit this year, but not quite to the same level as 18 and 19. I just want to know, I mean, do you think he comes back? Does he opt out? And what are the Boston fans? How have they kind of cottoned to JD over the years compared to how Tiger fans did?
I think JD is a really interesting character. Obviously, he's a great hitter, and the way that he kind of studies hitting and has worked like to teach himself how to be a better hitter is really impressive. And he's definitely made a lot of players on his team better hitters as a result. He kind of revamped, the way that he likes to have all of his batting practices taped so he can watch them back. And a bunch of other guys started doing the same thing, which was really cool because it was making them all kind of put in a different kind of effort to learn about what they're swinging like. And, the way he likes to kind of watch his footage of every at bat before the next at bat, I think is really cool. At the same time, I understand why he would hypothetically opt out, but he's like 32 years old and has had a lot of injuries and can't really do a ton of defensive work in the outfield anymore. So the idea of him opting out when he's generally limited to the American League and is of the age that he is and isn't exactly like he's having a good year. He's not having an amazing year. I think it would be very bold for him to go searching somewhere else. I think that, if he asked for a raise from the Red Sox, kind of renegotiate his extension, maybe add an extra year of option on, or like a mutual option or another, whatever. I think that they'd probably be willing to do that because his bat still is super powerful. But he's also talked even recently about the fact that when he hurt his ankle like a year or so ago, it kind of really messed up his swing, and he's still finding his way back to that. From that, I was seeing this literally today, him talking about how his ankle, which is kind of the turnkey of his swing, is still not the way that he wants it to be. I think that injury dates actually back to the 2018 World Series when he twisted it. And that's obviously 3 years ago now, which is insane. But yeah, I think he stays. I think he tries to renegotiate for some more money. But I feel like even though last offseason we saw teams be really, really hesitant to spend money after the financial losses that every billionaire ball club endured, even though they're literally all billionaires and I don't feel sorry for them. I still think that there are definitely going to be plenty of teams that are hesitant to spend money this year. A lot of teams the AAA team for the Red Sox was doing more in attendance for many of their games than the Tampa Bay Rays. I mean, there are lots of teams that don't want to spend money this year, and that's not going to change. The Phillies said that they'd be willing to exceed the luxury tax for the first time in franchise history at the deadline. They didn't do it. Clearly, it wouldn't have really made a difference at this point because you can't buy an entire bullpen at the trade deadline. But I was literally writing this afternoon for tomorrow for the Phillies site on Fansided. I was like, look, there are people who are literally saying now that what the Phillies should do is trade Bryce Harper and Zach Wheeler for a ton of prospects and basically restart the rebuild that they've been doing for like almost a decade, which is to me the most asinine thing that you could possibly suggest, because those are two people that you build a team around. I mean, that's like saying we should trade Mike Trout and build a new team of Angels prospects. Like, no, that's not what you do. The Phillies are now in a position where, with the money that is coming off the book for them and the fact that they've literally never exceeded the tax threshold, this would be the offseason that you spend. And I think that the clear sign of that is that Dave Dombrowski is in charge of the Phillies. This is the man that gave David Price the most lucrative contract to that point in pitching history. If you hire Dave Dombrowski, you better be prepared to open your checkbook and be like, I don't even want to know the amount. Just fill it out and take it away and then hide my bank statement from me. Like, otherwise, why is he here? You don't hire Dave Dombrowski to be like, so I think we can like find some upside in this guy with a 7 ERA, but he has like this one pitch that I really liked from this one video that some scout sent me. That's not what Dave Dombrowski does. Dave Dombrowski is the guy that gives your entire farm away to get Craig Kimbrell and Chris Sale. And then you win 108 regular season games in a World Series. That's what Dave Dombrowski does. That's why he gets hired. Not, and then you hire Preston Mattingly to do the other side of it, which I think is going to be really good. But like, you don't trade Bryce Harper. You build around Bryce freaking Harper so that next season he actually has runners on base when he hits a home run.
Exactly.
It's my very long-winded answer about JD Martinez.
I mean, I think, it's one of those things too where JD is such a beloved character here, and there's always, and I kid you not, anytime Uper, myself, or Chris write an article about a free agent, what about JD Martinez? And I look, and Boston's such a good, you hit the nail on the head. He could be a DH there permanently based off his injury. I did not realize his ankle was that bad, and so I know. I
think it's, I think he re-injured it. Maybe it's really hard to keep track with him because he has back spasms all the time. He has tons of back problems with like. He loves to play the outfield. So, and he tells Cora like it helps his hitting. But then he gets back spasm and he sits for 3 games. I'm like, so how is this helping your hitting? Because now your bat's not in the lineup for 3 games. That to me seems antithetical to your claim that it helps your hitting. I like JD a lot. I also personally wish that the Red Sox had fewer ultra conservative anti-vaxxers on their team after having a massive COVID outbreak that cost them half of the month of September. You know, JD had multiple kind of inconclusive tests throughout the season and kind of symptoms where he would miss a game or two and it would be panic mode. And he said he was going to get vaccinated. I don't know if he ended up getting it, but the point being, like, you can't be like 33 years old, back spasming, spreading COVID conspiracy theories, and not hitting the baseball, because at some point in Boston, something's going to give. And, you know, I like him in a lot of ways, but at the same time, you know, I would really like it if my team was like a little less MAGA.
No, we were.
You're free to believe whatever BS you want to believe until it means that your entire team has COVID. And then it's impacting my job and my happiness and the health and safety of everybody around you. Like, you want to go live in a farm and give yourself COVID all by yourself and never interact with another soul because you don't believe in the vaccine. That's fine because you're not hurting anybody. But this whole personal choice thing doesn't actually make, like, you know, everyone's like, well, it's a personal choice. It's also a personal choice to drive drunk. But when you crash into 7 people and burn a house down, then there are public consequences because your personal choice has impacted other people. And that's the case with the Red Sox the entire month of September when they had something like 15 people get COVID.
We were talking the other day about some of the randos who popped up on the Red Sox. Like Taylor Motter was like, hey, forgot about that guy. Like
Jose Iglesias is back. 2013 Jose Iglesias, the poor guy. I was actually going to ask you guys about this because you guys are Tigers guys. So Jose Iglesias makes his debut with the Red Sox. He plays with the Red Sox for like parts of 3 seasons. I think he made his debut in 2011. Basically, he gets traded in 2013. Like less than a month later, Xander Bogaerts makes his debut. Iglesias is then on the Tigers while the Tigers lose in the ALCS to the Red Sox. Years later, Iglesias comes back to the Red Sox to fill in for Xander Bogaerts, who took his job in 2013 and won 2 rings. And now, because of the time of year that Iglesias came back to the roster, he is not eligible to play in the postseason, which means that for the second time in his Red Sox career, he's ineligible for a play. I mean, look, they lost to the Orioles. I don't think they're making the wild card berth, but the point being, like, Jose Iglesias, I feel so bad for him. He's been like a linchpin of the team this month, and if they do make the postseason, he's ineligible for their roster. So, yeah,
that's a sweet,
my personal thoughts right there.
That's the sweet irony of it. And by the way, we're Vango. It's a fan, so.
Oh yeah, that's so nice. Thank you.
Yeah. And one last thing, or we'll let you go into the evening. But the one other thing, I'm glad that you're. This was something that with the Pistons being now, of course, Celtics starting out too. In the off season, outside of, are you going to be watching a lot of Celtics basketball? What's your plans for the off season? Because the Pistons are a young team that's going to be emerging a little bit. And you saw that it seems like the Celtics are a team on transition that continue to, I don't know how Boston does it every year, stay competitive like they have been, but the Celtics are an interesting team to watch this year coming up.
I'm so excited for the Celtics. I go to not during COVID, but I went to so many games in 2019 and early 2020, like up until about February of 2020. And my boyfriend actually went to one of the last Celtics games. He went like March 3rd or 5th or something. Like they played the Utah Jazz of all people. They played Rudy Gobert, like literally 2 weeks or like 10 days before the whole outbreak shut down the NBA. So I love the Celtics. I'm super excited. I'm sad that Kemba's not here anymore. He was my favorite, but I think their new head coach, Udoka, is going to be great. Al Horford coming back, I think, is going to be really exciting. I'm friends with his sister, so that's another personal thing of like she'll be in town, which is fun for me.
Nice.
She's amazing. And I mean, look, this is Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown's team now. Like they went from being like the kids that Kyrie was bossing around to like it's their team. And it is so exciting. I mean, it's kind of like the early days of the Red Sox having Mookie, Bradley, and Benintendi like win, dance, repeat in the outfield in 2016. You have JB and JT, and this is their Celtics team, and it's like so thrilling. Plus, they have Marcus Smart. They have so much talent. They actually have an Israeli player. They have who they drafted last year. Can't keep track anymore. Yam Madar. So that's really cool, except for, of course, all the people who are going to call him Yam, which is not his name. If you listen to this and care about the Celtics at all, his name is Yam. It means ocean. I'm so excited for them. I don't really care about hockey like at all. I actually kind of like the Seattle Kraken more because my friend Marissa is the beat reporter for the Kraken now in Seattle, and she's amazing. So I kind of told her that I was like, I think I'm into this Kraken team more. But basically my brain is now shifting into off-season mode. Part of me is bummed about it because when you exceed expectations and you do make a run for it for most of the season, I feel like, yeah, they weren't supposed to be good, but then they were good. So, it kind of sucks. At the same time, I've been so incredibly spoiled over the last 20 years of my life to see not just World Series teams, but like all the times the Red Sox made it to the postseason at all, even if they didn't win, they won the division title 3 years in a row. They've made, they've gone to other levels. I mean, they played in, what was it, 2008, 2007? I don't know. It's like they've been in the playoffs without winning a World Series. There are teams that can't even say that. The Mariners haven't been to the postseason since 2001. Like, who am I to complain? I've seen 4 World Series in my lifetime. The Indians haven't won since 1948. I mean, like, all I wanted was competitive, enjoyable baseball this season. For most of the season, I got competitive, enjoyable baseball. And that's all you really should ask for if you are a Red Sox or Yankees fan. Everyone else, or Dodgers fan. Anyone who's not one of those 3 teams fans, you can complain. You've probably earned it, but or Cardinals, they have 11 championships. They're fine. But like Tigers, all of the teams in the 80s who haven't won since the 80s, Tigers, Orioles, it's
the Brewers. It would be nice for the Brewers to win too. I mean, the Brewers would be.
When was the last time the Braves won? In the 90s?
95,
4, 5.
95,
was that John Smoltz
95.
year?
95.
Yeah. 95. Yeah, that was
the Blue Jays. Have the Blue Jays won since the 90s?
No,
93.
Yeah, back.
They won the year I was born.
Pirates 79.
Yeah, I literally wrote this a few years ago because I had actually, this is my first foray into the Phillies was 2017. I had written a piece for my site, Girl at the Game. That was like, if your team won in the 80s, they probably haven't won since. And it was like all of these teams. And that was when the Dodgers also hadn't won. And this was like a week after. It was early November. So I guess the Astros had just won the World Series, which is why I wrote it, because I was living in LA and I had gone to one of the World Series games. Dodgers lost. And I almost killed Reggie Jackson too, which is the weird part of the story where I ran into him face first in a stairwell and almost toppled him backwards. And I was like, oh my God, I just almost killed Mr. October in October. That would have been really, really bad.
Nice.
But anyway, the point being, I wrote this article and then I was out on a first date and we ran into some friends of this guy and basically said, his friend's like, oh, so he's like, this is Gabrielle. She's a sports writer, blah, blah, blah. And these guys, it was like, at the end of Lion King, when all the hyenas realize they can eat Scar.
Yeah.
So they're like, hold on one second.
We got a Lion King reference here. We got some of the best references.
Yeah. So they all looked at me and they're like, oh, let's try and stump this girl, because that's what a lot of guys do when like a girl's like, I remotely enjoy sports, which like, really? Because you could be like, I like sports, and be like, really? So what was the wind chill on the day that your pitcher made his, like the day that, Spencer Torkelson hit his first professional home run? Like who the hell knows? And if you do know, you're a weirdo. So this guy's like, oh, so you're like a Red Sox fan? Like, what? Like one of the guys was like asking about Severino, like, you know, on the Yankees and all this stuff. And then this other guy goes, so you're like a Red Sox fan, like they suck, like got booted out of the postseason, blah, blah. I'm like, they won the division 2 years in a row. Like that's kind of impressive. Like, I don't know, you know, okay. So I looked at him, I'm like, so who's your team? He goes, the Phillies, like go Phillies. Like this is like a typical like LA, like works at talent agency kind of bro dude. Like basically the LA version of like a Goldman Sachs bro in Wall Street in New York. And he's like, the Phillies, like love the Phillies, go Phillies. And I was like, so to be clear, you're a fan of the like oldest same name, same city franchise in Major League Baseball history that took 97 years to win its first World Series and then like another almost 30 to win their second. And you're making fun of my team for winning two division titles in a row and 3 World Series in the last 9 years. Really? And all the guys around him were like, oh man, like she totally got you. And I was just standing there and I'm thinking to myself, but if I hadn't written this article this week, I would have had no idea that the Phillies were that bad. But it really paid off because this guy was like, I saw that guy at the guy I was dating's holiday party like 3 months later, and he literally ran in the other direction. Like that's how badly I embarrassed him in front of his friends.
What you know about Tug McGraw? And then he would have been like, oh, yeah. And then he would have.
His son is Tim McGraw.
Yeah.
Married to Faith Hill. That's what I know. Yeah. But yeah,
Nice.
You know, I love this sport, but at the same time, around this time of the year, when my team is not very good, I'm kind of like, I kind of shift into, it's kind of like that point in the summer when you start thinking about sweaters. Or maybe it's just me because I love
hoodie.
clothes.
No, hoodie.
Right, but like you
Hoodie
know
weather.
that time of the year where you start thinking like, ooh, these boots would look really good on me, or like, you know, like I like fall fashion starts seeping into my brain even though I'm on the beach. I'm like, stop, no, it's not time yet. And then I'm like, but that sweater is really cute. I should order that for the fall. That's kind of how I feel. I just shift into off-season mode. And I think back to 2018 when I was so stressed out. That whole postseason, like that whole month of October for 2018, where I was like, you can't win a franchise record 108 games and then not win the World Series because none of the teams that you're facing throughout, and this goes back to what I was saying about wild card games, you can't, they were literally the best team in baseball that year. And there were so many times where it was like, this team should be in the World Series. And if they can just make it past the Astros and the Yankees, I think they can definitely win the World Series because the Dodgers were not as good as them that year. And if they had like all of these other wild card, blah, 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 expanded playoffs, all of this stuff, like you never know what's going to happen because anyone can get you. But I woke up one morning during the postseason and I had scratched my entire arm. I had basically in my sleep had like some kind of stress dream where I clawed myself like a cat. And I remember texting my mom being like, I'm covered in scratches. She goes, you had a stress dream. I'm like, oh my God, it's postseason baseball. It was like literally causing me to like claw at myself. It was horrifying. And I remember being so glad when they won, but more so just being grateful that I wasn't going to be stressed for like 5 months from baseball. Because after a while, it really, especially covering them basically 24/7, it really starts to kind of get you, especially the Phillies. I'm like, oh my God, please just let the Braves win so we can stop this charade that you're going to win the division because you're not. Like, just please, like I would like to just talk about what you're going to do this offseason because I can't take it anymore. Like, you're not this good. You're not good enough. I'm sorry. Just give Bryce Harper the NL MVP and leave already. Go fishing.
Well, it would be interesting to see Dave Dombrowski compete against the Tigers for free agents and see how that works out. But by the way, you can find, so in terms of your own website too, Girl at the Game, make sure to check her out, check out the site in terms of where you can find her at. And she's all over the place. If there's something, I know you're going to put out an article tomorrow. Where is the girlatthegame.com or is it, what's the exact website?
So girlatthegame.com, but I've kind of been like on a little bit of a hiatus just because I've been doing so much Fansided, and that's my full-time job. So,
right.
But season 2 of the Girl at the Game podcast will be launching in October. Awesome. Super excited about that. I have sports guests from all over the sports world. My first guest is actually going to be one of the directors of the NFLPA. So not baseball related, but super excited because he's incredibly inspiring and just a great person that people should get to know. And thank you guys so much for letting me blab. As you can tell, I don't talk to many people outside of my family due to COVID. So I'm not used to like cutting myself off.
Oh no, not to no, so not to it's to me when I had the pleasure to meet you last year during the Internet Baseball Writers Association. They had one of those email. That's some. In terms of it was the Internet Baseball Writers Association meetings. You were able to host it, and you did a really good job of controlling the flow of the conversation. Have everybody say we were talking about certain issues of the day. I can't remember the conversation, but
I do those once every like 2 months or so. I love doing those.
Those are fantastic, and it's a really good way to pick up some baseball knowledge and also kind of really open up your eyes to other parts of the game and other parts of just in terms of just this deep culture of people out there who are covering the game that are just beyond the beat writers. And so honestly, if you're thinking about writing and if you're thinking about joining the Fansided Network, there's a lot of opportunities. And also check out the Internet Baseball Writers Association. They're a well-organized, well-oiled machine. I still have to vote for my postseason or all the awards coming up here shortly, but there's such a great organization to join. So again, you can find her at This Ball's Out of Here, which is the Phillies website, Bo Sox Injection. And again, she's got her own website, season 2. We'll link everything. We'll put everything in the description and you can find it. And so again, thank you for joining us this evening. It was a pleasure.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for having me. Next time I'll be more concise. It's been kind of a crazy day. We have a rodent outbreak in our apartment building.
Ooh.
So we literally like in broad daylight, like saw mice running in our apartment that was literally just visited by pest control 2 days ago. Haven't slept, packed like a bag of random stuff and like ran out of our apartment and drove to my parents' house for the night. So it's like, it's been like, my brain is kind of all over the place today because like, I've just been scared of seeing mice all over the place all week.
You deserved to vent then tonight.
Yeah.
And the Red Sox lost to the freaking Orioles. So, I'm clearly not well.
I mean, Seattle's tied for the wild card. What is going on? What kind of fresh hell is this?
Honestly, I'd be happy for them just because they haven't done it since 2001. Like, again, like who are my team to complain? But at the same time, like if you're going to lose, at least lose to like a viable team. Like if you're going to, getting swept to the Yankees, swept by the Yankees sucks. But the Yankees are actually a moderately good team, so it makes sense that you're going to get swept by them. But you're going to lose 2 out of 3 to the Orioles with a wild card on the line? It's unacceptable behavior.
It's unacceptable. Well, again, and hopefully we'll get to talk some Celtics and Pistons, and hopefully the rivalry gets back to what it was before. So thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Of course. Thanks, guys.
Nice to meet you.
All right, so that was Gabrielle Starr from she's part of the Fansided Network, and thanks for everybody who was sticking around for that. And it was one of those conversations where it was like I sometimes like just sit back and let somebody go, and she did a really good job of explaining the Phillies too, because the Phillies are a team until Chris mentioned Ranger last week. It was a team I wasn't really paying attention to outside of Wheeler. So do we have any questions this week, Chris?
I got one sort of vaguely related to the free agent post. And we also had the one we had the one that Christopher mentioned in the chat here about like Altuve last year. What happened? Well, and it kind of reminded me of JD Martinez. JD Martinez also had a really bad year last year, and I think they said last year that hitters were not allowed to access video data in the dugout.
That's right. They were not allowed to access it. That's what. Yeah.
And I think a lot of hitters these days are very reliant on that sort of thing, and certainly JD Martinez is the type of hitter who would be like that. And it wouldn't shock me if Altuve is either. Not everybody's Miguel Cabrera, where he just kind of remembers everything and doesn't look at the data. But that would be one explanation. Otherwise, I don't really know. I mean, it was a very strange year. Who knows what caused the issues last year? But the one question I saw was from John Lumpkin, our friend, and he was responding to the free agent piece. And he said, "What about thoughts on trades?" He said, "Thoughts on Cody Bellinger and Christian Pache, who might need a change in scenery." He said, "I like your $50 million challenge, but trades could both upgrade the MLB team and save money toward that budget."
I agree with the trade aspect, which is what we're rolling out these trade articles. But Uber, go ahead. You got your wheels turning there. I saw the wheels going there.
Well, I mean, Bellinger, obviously the Dodgers would be selling low. Had a really, really rough year. Went long stretches with absolutely no production. If they're looking to move him and the price was relatively cheap, I mean, that could be a bounce back candidate. I don't know how long his contract, what he has left. I guess that would be the only thing that worries me, and I don't know that off the top of my head. But if it's not an onerous deal, you know, there are worse things to take a chance on than a guy with big power hits from the left side, plays center field. You know, I don't know what, but I wouldn't give up much for him at this point. Pache, yeah, change of scenery. You know, you're getting maybe a better version of Derek Hill if things pan out.
Bellinger, by the way, is a free agent in 2024.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you got 3 years of control for him, right? So
Yeah,
after
correct.
after 24 season, yeah.
Yep.
You know, what would you give for him? I mean, shouldn't take that much off the year. If they're just looking to cut the payroll.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Raj in the idea that they are going to have to make some trades. I think you can't just completely build the team via the draft and free agency. You need to have to make some trades at some point, and those are interesting names. The Bellinger one is just really strange to me. Not suggested to trade for him, but he's just such an interesting case where 2 years ago he's 23 years old and hits 305 with 47 home runs and is an MVP with an 8-WAR season.
Yeah.
And this year he's a negative WAR player who evidently can't hit fastballs, and he's still only 26. And it's just bizarre. I can't think of any other comparable player to that who wasn't like severely injured to just completely fall off a cliff like that.
Between the years, then, Chris, you think?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, you would think that the teams would have figured out that he couldn't hit fastballs earlier than this year.
Yeah.
Or last year. So there may be something to it. I don't know. And generally speaking, I'm not going to trade with the Dodgers because if they don't think they can fix him, then I don't think anybody else can. I suppose there is the one aspect that you know he was a guy who changed his swing in the minors to hit for more power. He didn't hit for hardly any power in his first couple of years. And Ryan Garco was his manager in Double-A Tulsa. So maybe he's got some insight, some ideas there. But like you were saying, like what the hell do you give up for Cody Bellinger? He made $16 million this year. And I think it was his first or second year of arbitration. He's got 2 ARB years left. And I don't remember guys ever like their salaries going down in arbitration. So yeah. You would think it has to, though, right? Like he's not going to make $20 million after a negative 1 WAR season.
Well, they're obligated to offer him 80%.
Yeah, so he might get non-tendered by the Dodgers. Like I don't know, maybe
Scott Boras is his agent too. Keep that in mind. So
yeah, and so then if you're going to trade for him, what in the world do you give up to get a guy who's that cost that much money, is coming off such a terrible season? I mean, the upside you theoretically is still there, but yeah, I mean, to me, that's just a whole article in itself, right? About Cody Bellinger. It's like really interesting. And it's funny. I made the same comparison with Pache. I made the same comparison, Derek Hill or like a Victor Robles, where he's this outstanding center field defender with a lot of speed, but Pache was so overmatched by major hitting or pitching this year that you have to like be a little bit concerned because I wrote that article about Isaac Paredes not hitting the ball hard enough to succeed in the majors. Pache makes Paredes look like Giancarlo Stanton. His average exit velocity is under 82 miles an hour.
Wow.
Which is rough. There were it's 40 batted balls, so it's not a ton of sample, but it's kind of a lot. He topped out at 104 or something. There are 10 pitchers this year with a higher average exit velocity than Pache. But again, I mean, he's not a small guy. He's like 6'2", with decent size. You'd think there'd be a little bit of raw power in there, and he is a great athlete. So he would be kind of an interesting change of scenery guy if you think you can unlock some power somehow. Right. So I like that. I like that thinking. I'm just not necessarily sure if he's the guy to target.
What did you two, going further from John's question, what did you think of Henning's tweet? The idea of trading Mize, the idea that trades are going to be a big deal coming up.
Wait, okay, let me cue this up a little bit because I think this is kind of one of those situations where I know what Lynn was trying to do, but
I got a few names I like to call him.
There's a lot of Tiger fans. A lot of Tiger fans were thinking that about him. I personally like Lynn Henning. So, but a lot of Tiger fans were really just basically saying this.
You don't know anything. You don't know squat, you stupid idiot.
And that's what Tiger fans were thinking about Lynn Henning's tweet. And but I understand what Lynn was trying to say, because it's the same thing all of us are saying. They're going to have to trade an arm to get what they want. It's that simple.
Yep.
I don't understand. And I've talked about this 3 weeks in a row, but I feel like this is a theme that's been going on for a long time among Tiger fans. Baseball executives are not stupid. You're not gonna trade Ruben Garcia and a bag of balls for Koi. I was saying Ruben Garcia because it was the first prospect that came to mind. Sorry, Chris is like, why'd you say Ruben Garcia? I don't know. Anyway, no one's gonna take Jacob Robson. You know what I mean? Like, again, it's no offense to those guys whatsoever, but baseball executives are not dumb. These guys are Ivy League. A lot of them are Ivy League guys. So, and minus the what's going on with the Marlins. But my point is, they're not just going to get any pile of crap for their best guys. And so, don't trade the farm. Then when you suggest it, what, all free agency is not going to solve the issues. The Tigers have a like, you look at Spencer Torkelson, is not a guarantee. Again, not a guarantee that him and Green are going to be like a for sure thing. Green is based off his age. He has time and all that. I understand that. But that is too much to ask any prospect. Like Kreidler, the more Kreidler hits, the more on Twitter we saw this. So they have to trade somebody. Kreidler might be traded. Who knows? I don't know. No one knows for sure. So they have their guys marked that they like in a system.
I'll say this. Henning, nobody's always right. Nobody's always wrong.
Right.
But he will always have the ability to point at the scoreboard and say, I had Granderson 8 weeks before anybody else, that trade was going to happen. And he was crushed by everybody for that. How dare you even present that idea that we're going to trade Curtis Granderson? And he nailed it. And he was right. And the Tigers won that trade decisively, I think. And, as we said last week, I believe it was last week, maybe the week before, we were batting around a Ketel Marte trade, right?
Yeah.
If the Tigers are going to go after a guy like that, whether it's him or anybody else of that level, the trade, I keep saying this, the trade's going to hurt a little. Okay? They're going to feel the pinch. They're going to give up something that pisses off a ton of fans. But that's just how it's going to be if it happens.
Yeah, Lynn's well connected. What were you going to say, Chris?
Oh, no, I think people see that, and I don't know what they imagine in their head, but I think they imagine that the Tigers would trade Casey Mize for like some random prospects or something. Like, they're not going to trade Casey Mize for nothing. It would probably be for a similar level offensive player at a similar age. Like, it would be one of those things where like they just need to readjust where their strengths are, and it would be kind of like that Granderson trade where they got a similar center fielder and got another pitcher. It was kind of a 2-for-1 deal. It was more of like a 4-for-6 or whatever back then, but something like that where you're giving up a young pitcher because you feel like you need a young hitter in a different position. So yeah, something like that is bound to happen. Maybe not this offseason, but in the next couple of years, I think you have to assume at some point they're going to trade somebody.
And I'll leave this before we get out of here. I look at the Reese Olson trade as a different type of trade for the Tigers. And I mentioned this last week. I didn't really elaborate, but I thought about it since the discussion last week. And here's why I think it's a kind of a different type of trade for the Tigers. One, it was an arm that no one knew about. No one knew who Reese Wilson was, unless you're a real diehard prospect guy. And Chris and I have watched a lot of minor league baseball. Outside of watching him against Ray Rivera earlier in the year against Wisconsin, when he was with Wisconsin, I didn't know anything about him. Nothing. Mm-hmm. And he's the kind of guy that came in, he did really well in high A, and then he got promoted to AA pretty quickly and excelled well there. The Tigers are going to make trades for guys you may have never heard of. And you might get frustrated and go, who is this? And it might be paying off because they're doing their homework. That Reese Olson trade was them doing their homework. Mm-hmm. And that was a guy that really came out of the woodwork, and that's somebody that knew something and it was able to follow through, because Kenny Graham used to be part of the Brewers organization. He might have checked the sources. There's a lot of things and I think that's what's going to happen this year. The Tigers are going to make a lot of trades if they do make any trade, it's not going to be some household name. It might be a name that's up and coming that we don't know about, that may have a high walk rate or have power, or they see something that they like the Dodgers do, for example. They see something, or like the Rays do. The Rays see something in somebody else and they make a win. The Tigers might be doing that sooner or later too. But with Olsen got better after he got traded. If you look at his numbers were better. So something to me that is a reason why I'm actually, for once, rather optimistic, because they saw something like, you know what, we'll make them even better.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why you employ area scouts. You employ guys who are going to go see these pitchers or these hitters multiple times over several months over the course of the year. And they go, hey, wait a minute, this guy's improving. I think back to the Robbie Ray trade, when the Tigers traded Doug Fister for Robbie Ray, and everybody's like, Robbie Ray's not even a top 100 prospect. And he wasn't. He never was a top 100 prospect. And here he is. I mean, it's years and years later, but it didn't take too much longer for people to realize, wow, yeah, like this guy really has a lot of talent. He wasn't great when he came up to the Tigers, but he had a couple good seasons with Arizona shortly thereafter, and here he is, going to win a Cy Young possibly. So yeah, it's this just goes kind of to the idea that fans tend to rely too much on those prospect rankings at times of trades, and we'll see what happens if they trade them, if they trade anybody, who they get in return. But yeah, you just this is why you have scouts. You got to kind of trust the scouts occasionally.
Yeah, no doubt. And so on that note, thank you for listening to Tigers Radio Pod here at MotorCityBengals.com. Check out, we got a lot of great work coming up in October. It's going to be a really good month as we kick off the off season here. This is the final regular season. Just it dawned on me, this is the final regular season show, and then we go in the postseason mode. So we'll be doing the regular segments until the end of the season, and then come November 1st, we go in the postseason mode, or off season mode, which is essentially no good, bad, the ugly, no inside the numbers. We just go all over the place, and we talk pop culture and that kind of stuff. And there's especially big winter coming up for the Tigers. So again, check out all our great content over at MotorCityBengals.com. And shout out to Jake Bose, who's up in Traverse City, because he is taking a well-deserved vacation. So shout out to him, and shout out to, let's go see something else, and I lost my train of thought. Oh, Gabrielle, thank you for, again, shout out to her, doing a fantastic job holding it down, despite all that stuff going on with her apartment. No, I've been dealing with rats. Yeah, you know what? Because we have all the rain water here and the floodplain, all the rats come up the street. It sucks. It is. You can keep your backyard immaculate, still have a problem, and it's. I mean, my dog has. Anyway, that's another story for another day. We're almost at 2 hours at this podcast. So, on that note, we'll see you next week. Have a good week, everybody.
Goodbye.